This man is not an Egyptian pharaoh but Apocalypse, the oldest mutant in the world. He lived in 3600 BC and ruthlessly enslaved everyone. No one knows how many years he has lived because every time his body ages, his four horsemen find him a new body to achieve eternal life. And this time, it is a body with the ability to self-heal through the transfer of consciousness. He not only acquires the superpowers of the host body but these abilities can also be stacked infinitely. Very quickly the rebirth ceremony began. The top on top of the pyramid was pulled down. Under the sunlight, the mysterious energy currents at the top of the pyramid were activated and continued to spread. At this moment, Apocalypse's consciousness began to shift, and this was when he was most vulnerable. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the oppressed people secretly launched a coup. Immediately after, 2 pillars were smashed and a stone weighing thousands of tons came crashing down. But the 4 horsemen of Apocalypse were not easy to deal with either. One of them only needed to clap his hands to turn the soldiers into skeletons. Another controlled fire and turned it into fiery arms, directly burning the remaining soldiers to ashes. However, the falling stones continued to destroy the structure of the pyramid, causing the entire pyramid to collapse. At this point, the room also began to shake. A large stone fell toward Apocalypse, but one of the knights managed to catch it. Suddenly, an assassin jumped out to kill him but was attacked by a knight. However, at that moment, the stones above also slid down to the end, striking the most critical load-bearing point of the pyramid, causing one of the knights to be crushed to death on the spot. In this critical life-or-death situation, a female knight quickly used her superpower to transfer the armor onto Apocalypse's new body. However, she was struck by a falling stone, causing her body to gradually lose consciousness. In the final moments of her life, she still used all her strength to protect Apocalypse, while she herself passed away peacefully. In the blink of an eye, thousands of years passed. A group of followers who regarded Apocalypse as a god discovered this place. The sun of truth shone upon the top of the pyramid before them. Mysterious streams of energy began to glow. Apocalypse, who had been sleeping for thousands of years, suddenly awoke to find himself trapped underground. He immediately gathered his energy and boom, a huge explosion occurred. Not long after, Apocalypse appeared on the streets draped in a cloak. He realized that this was no longer the Egypt he once ruled. At that moment, a stylishly short-haired girl caught his attention. Suddenly, the girl's eyes turned completely white. She summoned a swirl of dust and then took the opportunity to steal from the stall owner. This girl is Storm, but right after that she was stopped by the stall owner who fired at her. As the stall owner threatened Storm, Apocalypse suddenly appeared. Unexpectedly, the stall owner even tried to threaten Apocalypse. It's true what they say, you don't cry until you see the coffin. No one expected that as soon as Apocalypse raised his hand, the swirling dust would slice off their heads, killing those people like sharp blades. Immediately after Apocalypse activated his superpowers again, the stall owner was instantly swallowed up by the wall behind him, leaving behind only a terrified face. After that, Storm took Apocalypse back to her hideout. As soon as he walked in, he was immediately drawn to the television in the room. Instinctively, he reached out to touch the TV. Countless images flashed through his mind. In just a few seconds, he understood the changes that had taken place over thousands of years and discovered that the world was now ruled by ordinary humans. Apocalypse was not pleased about this. He was determined to cleanse and purify the entire earth, returning it to his era of rule, and the first step was to re-establish his alliance of 4 horsemen. It's not yet clear how he would do it, but Apocalypse reached out and held Storm's chin, immediately unleashing his energy and turning her into his first horseman. After that, they went to find Psylocke, a mutant who could turn her thoughts into weapons. With just a glance from Apocalypse, Psylocke's energy sword instantly became 10 times thicker, and with Psylocke's introduction, they found Angel, the 3rd mutant. But at this point, one of Angel's wings had already been broken. But when Apocalypse intervened, Angel's wings not only evolved into a metallic form, but the feathers could also transform into sharp blades that could be shot outward. And the 4th horseman of Apocalypse was none other than the famous Magneto. Suddenly, due to a careless mistake, a furnace with temperatures of several thousand degrees accidentally fell down. At that critical moment, the man suddenly acted, causing the furnace to hover in midair. This man was Magneto in disguise. After the incident, Magneto looked around and noticed the strange looks from his co-workers. He knew he couldn't stay here any longer, so he quickly went home to take his wife and child and escape. However, when they went to look for their daughter, they discovered her room was empty. The two quickly went out to search for the girl's whereabouts. Finally, when they reached a small forest, they saw their daughter being restrained by a group of police officers. It turned out that they had discovered he was actually Magneto. For the safety of his daughter, he willingly allowed himself to be captured. However, when the daughter saw her father being arrested, she became agitated and awakened her superpowers, summoning countless birds to attack the police. In a moment of panic, a police officer accidentally let go, causing a sharp arrow to fly directly into the mother and daughter. Magneto rushed over to embrace the bodies of his wife and daughter, weeping in anguish. After the pain and despair came overwhelming rage. He removed his daughter's necklace and gripped it tightly in his hand. With a single motion, the necklace flew out and slashed the throats of each police officer. Not a single police officer was spared. Watching the blood-stained necklace fly back into his hand, it seemed his hands would once again be stained with blood. When he returned to the factory, all the doors had already been shut. While the workers stood there staring at him in bewilderment, a purple portal suddenly appeared behind them. He turned around and saw Apocalypse and his 3 horsemen. But Magneto didn't care about his identity. He warned the other side not to get in his way, but unexpectedly, Apocalypse's eyes turned completely white. After this encounter, Magneto no longer refused Apocalypse's invitation. They went to the concentration camp through the portal. This is the place where Magneto awakened his superpowers. The pains of his childhood appeared before his eyes, making Magneto want to fight to the end, and Apocalypse took the opportunity to guide Magneto to discover his true potential. Soon, tiny pieces of metal gathered beneath Magneto's hand. Immediately after, countless pieces of metal turned into a stream and burst out along with his roar. With that tremendous power, he completely destroyed this place. Just as Magneto unleashed his potential, Mystique also came to find the professor. She learned that Magneto's wife and daughter had been killed, along with the bodies of a group of police officers left at the scene. At this moment, the media everywhere was reporting on the incident. It was certain that humanity would never let Magneto go. She came here to seek help from the professor. Knowing this was an emergency, he decided to take action. He put on the Cerebro helmet, and immediately all the mutants on Earth appeared before him. Thanks to this nose, Magneto was quickly found. But at this point, Magneto had already been consumed by hatred. Because humanity had taken everything from him, now he wanted to make them pay with blood. At this moment, Apocalypse suddenly turned to look at Magnet. He seemed to sense the professor's presence, so he immediately gathered energy to invade the professor's psychic world. However, the professor's powerful telepathic abilities took Apocalypse by surprise. He used the professor's superpowers to connect with the nuclear bomb sentinels all over the world, controlling them to activate the switches simultaneously. At that moment, countless nuclear bombs soared into the sky. This scene terrified everyone. At the critical moment, the professor broke free from the control and regained his composure. He immediately ordered the mastermind to be eliminated. A shockwave released a burst of energy. Instantly, a barrage of lasers destroyed all the machinery, and the professor also fell into a coma. Everyone quickly tried to evacuate him, but just as they left the room, Apocalypse appeared with the 4 horsemen and led them to capture the professor. Ryan tried to stop them, but unexpectedly, a laser beam shot straight through the gate, accidentally hitting a machine behind the door and causing a massive explosion. At this critical moment, time suddenly began to move very slowly. A figure appeared outside the school. This young man is the fastest character in the X-Men movies. He came here just to find the professor, but unexpectedly got caught up in the explosion. After rescuing everyone, Quicksilver noticed there was a girl on the upper floor, so he dashed up to the damaged floor and then brought her outside. After that, Quicksilver went into the bathroom to give a guy a really cool hairstyle. Wherever he went, he gathered people along the way. Not only that, when he entered the bedroom, he immediately tossed the boy out the window using a blanket. When he rescued the young girl, he didn't forget to take 2 sips of cola. He even saved the school's dog from the fire. Finally, Quicksilver grabbed 2 panicked students, kicked the table out the window and dashed outside. When time returned to normal, all the students either fell into the water or flew straight into the bedsheets. Except for Blaster Psylocke's brother, who was too close to the explosion and unfortunately died, everyone else was successfully rescued. However, at that moment, a helicopter approached. Everyone thought it was a rescue helicopter, but unexpectedly the person who got out was Stryker. He ordered the soldiers around to fire shockwaves even though they had not been authorized to use them, leaving everyone stunned. After that, the model and a group of people were kidnapped. The 3 Psylocke siblings were standing far away, so they escaped the disaster. They immediately teleported onto the plane using their superpowers, intending to rescue everyone directly, but unexpectedly, there was a special magnetic field inside the plane. It not only prevented Kurt Wagner from teleporting, but also neutralized Jean's psychic abilities. The plane flew straight to a secret base. Mystique and the others were also imprisoned in a special cell. Stryker was about to interrogate their professor when suddenly the professor's voice echoed in everyone's ears. It turned out that Apocalypse was controlling the professor. Through the professor, Apocalypse issued a declaration of war against all of humanity. But what he didn't know was that the professor had quietly used this opportunity to send Jean a message about his location. But now she herself was also in trouble as the guards in the base had discovered an intruder. In their panic, the 3 of them accidentally entered a laboratory. Jean sensed that inside this metal box there seemed to be a ferocious beast. At that moment, the base guards broke down the door and rushed in. To avoid being hunted by the soldiers, Jean used her psychic powers to open the metal box in the cell. The base immediately sounded the alarm and the killer stepped out of the cell. He was none other than Wolverine. At this point, Wolverine had been completely modified and his memory erased. When they saw Wolverine, the soldiers immediately opened fire on him. Wolverine, enraged, began to fight back. Because he had been subjected to inhumane torture for a long time, Wolverine now resembled a truly ferocious beast. He wiped out all the soldiers who stood in his way. Stryker, terrified by his brutal display, ran for his life. In the end, Wolverine managed to escape from the base and disappeared into the snow. However, the chaos caused by Wolverine helped Jean and her group find Mystique and the others. After Scott opened the door with his laser beam, everyone was reunited and decided to immediately set out to rescue the Professor. Meanwhile, in order to obtain the Professor's superpowers, Apocalypse devised a plan to build another pyramid. He began to activate his powers, and in just a moment, the entire city was reduced to ashes. All around, whirlwinds formed and gathered in one place. These whirlwinds continuously amassed energy. By the time Apocalypse stopped using his powers, a magnificent pyramid had appeared, standing tall amidst the ruins. Apocalypse used grains of sand to recreate Magneto's helmet and handed it to him. Because Magneto was a crucial link in his plan, Apocalypse needed to prepare him to destroy the world and completely obliterate all of humanity's creations. When Magneto closed his eyes, he immediately sensed the magnetic fields everywhere. The surrounding magnetism caused a building below to instantly shatter. These magnetic fields continued to expand underground, directly affecting the ocean floor. Under the influence of the magnetic field, cargo ships at sea were impacted. Countless containers suddenly flew up in all directions, causing a group of people to panic and flee for their lives. Magneto's power affected every place in the world, causing everything to be destroyed, and the military command discovered that the Earth's entire magnetic field was changing. If Magneto continues like this, human civilization may be forced back to the Stone Age. Just as they were struggling, the X-Men arrived in a fighter jet. Right after witnessing this horrifying scene, they decided to split into two teams. Quicksilver led Mystique through the floating building as they rushed together toward Magneto. But the magnetic field around Magneto was too strong, so the two of them had no way to get past his protective shield. Mystique could only act based on emotion and reason. That means Magneto's family doesn't just include his wife and daughter, but also the Professor and Mystique. In the past, he never had the chance to save his loved ones, but now that opportunity has come. After Mystique and Quicksilver got ready to return to the battlefield, Magneto fell into deep thought again. Memories of his past with the Professor kept resurfacing in his mind. An unconscious tear fell from the corner of his eye. Meanwhile, the Professor was being brought inside the pyramid. Apocalypse was preparing to begin the sacrificial ritual. As long as he could obtain the Professor's abilities, Apocalypse would be able to control everyone in the world and become an invincible overlord. However, just as the ceremony was taking place, Nightcrawler entered the pyramid and began searching relentlessly for the Professor's location. But suddenly, a dark shadow swooped down from the wall. It turned out to be Angel, Apocalypse's bodyguard, who had come to stop Nightcrawler. At this moment, his green-skinned teammate was also in trouble after running into Psylocke. Afraid of the glowing whip in Psylocke's hand, Beast could only rely on his own brute strength to keep dodging her attacks. However, he still ended up getting beaten badly by her. Just as Psylocke was about to strangle him to death, Beast managed to escape with a kick, then immediately threw her onto the roof of a tall building. While they were fiercely battling outside, the ceremony on the Professor's side was gradually coming to an end. At this point, the Professor had not only lost all his hair, but his pupils were also beginning to change. Fortunately, at this moment, Nightcrawler had moved to the metal chamber, temporarily escaping the pursuit of Angel. He then quickly located the Professor and used his teleportation ability to rescue him. After that, he hurried to where his friends were fighting. As soon as he brought them back to the spaceship, all of them planned to evacuate immediately, but Apocalypse's followers were not about to let them go so easily. Psylocke and Angel could be seen jumping onto the spaceship together, creating a huge hole and descending inside. Ring quickly asked everyone to keep an eye on Nightcrawler, then used his remote control ability to push the lever, causing the spaceship to plunge straight toward the ground. At the last moment, Nightcrawler activated his potential and teleported everyone away. Seeing that the situation was dire, Psylocke let go and escaped from the spaceship, but Angel was still trapped inside and crashed to the ground along with the ship. At the same time, Apocalypse inside the pyramid also woke up. He realized that he had not gained the abilities he desired and also noticed that the Professor had been rescued. Apocalypse, enraged, let out a furious roar, teleported out of the pyramid and saw the miserable corpse of the Angel. But he only angrily cursed him as trash, then continued searching for the Professor's location. Because of the effects of their soul-linking ritual, Apocalypse knew that the Professor had not yet left. The moment Apocalypse called out to the Professor, everything was suddenly put on pause. It turned out that Quicksilver had activated his superpower and punched Apocalypse away. As Apocalypse's pupils kept darting around, in the next second the earth and sand on the ground began to wrap around Quicksilver's legs. Even so, Quicksilver still tried to fight back, but his arm was broken by Apocalypse. Then Apocalypse broke his calf with a kick and next grabbed Quicksilver by the hair to let his subordinate Psylocke deal with him. Psylocke drew her sword, but suddenly she turned and slashed Apocalypse across the neck. Psylocke was lifted up by Apocalypse with one hand. In the end, unable to maintain her ability due to a lack of oxygen, her true form was revealed. It turned out to be Mystique. While Apocalypse was threatening the lives of the two of them, the professor suddenly regained consciousness. The professor was about to commit suicide when he suddenly remembered that their spiritual worlds were connected. At this point, the best option was to try directly invading Apocalypse's mind. At that moment, Apocalypse's expression changed, but in the next second, the professor felt the pain of the mutants. All of it flooded into Apocalypse's mind with an overwhelming amount of information, causing Apocalypse's eyes to widen. The model girl was released, but the professor's attack was not over yet. He threw punch after punch at Apocalypse, but Apocalypse was still Apocalypse after all. The situation immediately reversed. Apocalypse's form became gigantic. He not only overpowered the professor but also tormented him like a rag doll. At that moment he sensed the professor's location, so with a wave of his hand all the walls of the building disappeared. As Apocalypse advanced toward the professor, he was blocked by 2 iron bars. Everyone suddenly looked up and saw Magneto floating in the sky. It turned out that he was the one who had intervened just now. Magneto had decided to betray Apocalypse. With his supernatural powers, the surrounding metal floated up into the air, forming 2 long tentacles that flew toward Apocalypse to attack him. But Apocalypse kept advancing, protected by a shield surrounding his body. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 2 mutants quickly ran over as well. Scott fired his laser beams, joining forces with Magneto to attack him. Meanwhile, the blue guy went to rescue Mystique and Quicksilver, then joined the fight as well. But before he could do anything, Apocalypse sent him flying with just a snap of his fingers. Next, he hurled Scott against the wall. As for Magneto, he also despised him quite a bit. Meanwhile, in the spiritual realm, the professor was also being beaten within an inch of his life by Apocalypse. But the professor simply told him, "You've already lost." As soon as he finished speaking, a door suddenly appeared. A graceful figure stepped through. She was Jean. With the professor's encouragement, Jean unleashed the full extent of her powers. Whether in the spiritual realm or the real world, under Jean's power, the Lord Apocalypse was completely unable to resist. In the end, his form in the spiritual world was wiped out by Jean, and his armor was destroyed in the real world as well. Magneto seized the opportunity and launched countless steel beams at him, leaving him severely injured. On the other side, Scott finally managed to break free with Beast's help. As soon as he got out, he immediately took off his glasses and fired a laser beam at Apocalypse. At this point, Apocalypse could only try to escape, but in the next moment, countless bolts of lightning appeared all around him. The one responsible for this was none other than Storm, one of his own gods. Apocalypse appeared desperate and helpless. When Jean unleashed her power, not even his self-healing abilities could save him. In the end, Apocalypse was reduced to ashes by Jean. Everyone looked at each other in silence, unable to believe that the mighty Apocalypse had died like this. After this battle, thanks to the efforts of Magneto and Jean, they rebuilt the academy. But at this point, Magneto had chosen his own path. The 2 close friends still decided to part ways, and the professor also realized the necessity of strength, so he appointed Mystique as the mentor to train the new generation of X-Men in preparation for new threats. And with this scene, today's movie has come to an end. Thank you all and see you next time.